Hi, everyone. I am Michael Hingson, and I happen to be the host of Unstoppable Mindset, where inclusion, diversity, and the unexpected meet. And today we're not going to really deal a lot with inclusion or diversity. We're going to deal with everything else, which is the unexpected. Just happens to come out that way. It just seemed like a great way to introduce it. But anyway, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. We're glad you're here. Hope you're having a good day wherever you happen to be. And our guest today is TC Cooper. And TC, which does not stand for Top Cat, for those of you who are familiar with old cartoons, TC is an executive coach. She has done a lot of things with a lot of different kinds of people. And bottom line is, I think she's got a lot to tell us. And she'll help show why we all think we're less unstoppable than we really are, or that we're more unstoppable than we think we are. Anyway, TC, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. We're glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael. I'm excited about being here and helping everyone see that we are more unstoppable than we think we are.
There you are.
Absolutely.
There you are. Tell us a little bit about kind of the early TC Cooper growing up and all that.
Oh gosh. Well, I'm from a little town in South Carolina, Hemingway, South Carolina, and a beautiful small town. I grew up with my parents and both sets of my grandparents and my younger brothers and a really loving church family that was very instrumental in growing up. And so that's kind of how I grew up. Small town, rural girl, South Carolinian. Went off to college in Virginia, Hampton University, which I absolutely loved. A wonderful place to come of age. And then to maybe not to the excitement of my parents, I went to law school in New York City, to Columbia Law School, which I
Oh boy.
absolutely loved and loved living in New York. I have to say, my family was not as excited about my choice to go to school in New York because I got into great schools in the South and I would have loved either one of my top choices, but I had to go to New York. And it was the absolute right choice. And I like to say that time spent in my mid 20s in the city, coupled with my background from the rural South, has had a huge part in shaping kind of how I see the world and how I've moved about the world in my career and in my life.
Why New York? What really attracted you to going to New York to do law school?
When I was in high school, my French teacher, we had a French teacher, Mary Finn, who I've tried to find in years, in the past years, and I haven't been able to find her. But anyway, had a teacher, Mary Finn. She took a group of students to Europe for our spring break.
Mm.
And we went to London, we went to Paris. And because of that trip, I had in my mind that I wanted to be an international lawyer. And a part of being I knew I wanted to be a lawyer because I have uncles who are lawyers, but that trip made me think about being an international lawyer. And as I was finishing college, my desire was to go to an international city, to be in a place where there would be people around me from different parts of the world, studying with people from different parts of the world. And what city in the US is more international than New York
Hmm.
City? And that's why it had. Now, maybe some people listening will have a different opinion, but for me, it was New York. That was the place to be, where I was going to kind of live out this desire to learn everything that I needed to know about being an international lawyer. And I am blessed, and I am fortunate to have practiced law internationally and to now have a business that serves people around the world. And so I got what I needed from Colombia, and I hope that I gave back a lot while I was there
Cool. Well,
and in
yeah.
the years past.
Well, you're not really much or as much directly in the law as you originally were when you were in college, are you?
That's very true. That is very true.
Things
Um,
change.
Things do. Things always change, in unexpected ways a lot of times, and so it is wonderful to be open to whatever experiences bring you, and do what you can to position yourself to where you want to be, and then just be open to how life how life leads you, where it is that life leads you when you've been intentional about putting yourself where you'd like to be.
But you started by practicing law.
I started by practicing law. First
Okay.
job. Yep,
And how long
absolutely.
did you do that?
Michael, the years pass. I've practiced law for more than 25 years. And so
Wow.
now, within that time, there's this kind of concept called a portfolio career. So while I've been practicing law, I've also done other things. So I ran a small business, I've had a coaching practice, a variety of things, but I have been a practicing attorney for a little bit more than 25 years now.
Wow. So you still continue to do practice, as it were, I gather.
Very light. I do. I don't have a traditional law job. And so I use some not so right now I'm not practicing law. I use my legal background in the
Hmm.
advisory work that I do. So I haven't practiced traditionally. Actually, not it hasn't been that long. Since the beginning of the year, I've transitioned into advisory work and consulting and coaching, which I love full time.
Now you're in Virginia today, right?
I am in Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C.
What a great place to practice law.
Yeah, it's a
So,
fantastic place. And you know what? It is a fantastic place to practice
yeah.
law. And I've practiced in New Jersey, for a company, for a public company, and so that was a great place as well. But the fun thing about New York, I mean not New York City. New York City is cool. The fun thing about Washington D.C. is that there's so many different types of industry here, right? So you have government, which has been a big part of my career, but you have associations here. You have a tech industry in Virginia that's here. There's of course there's a lot of politics here.
Yeah.
Congress is here, so it's a very diverse place to practice law, to work, interact with people.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Where did
I
you
love
live
it.
in New Jersey when you were there?
I lived in Caldwell,
Oh,
which is a
okay.
small town near Montclair. It's in North Jersey.
North Jersey, right.
Yep,
My
yep.
wife and I lived in Westfield for 6 years. So that's sort of, well, not in central. It's a little bit north. It's north of central Jersey.
Okay.
135 off the parkway.
So this is so funny, right? I had no idea of the significance of your exit off of the parkway until I moved to New Jersey. So it was fun. It was a fun time. And I'll tell you, this is the other thing about New Jersey. I never watched the television show. What is it called? Sopranos. The Sopranos.
Sopranos.
Never watched it. And then when I was telling my friends I was moving to Caldwell, they were like, "Oh my goodness, well you've got to watch The Sopranos." So I watched maybe I watched the whole season actually. And so then it became fun because West Caldwell and Caldwell, there were like landmarks that were in the show that actually
Yeah.
I got to see in real life. So it was interesting. And then one other kind of funny story about that, when I went to New York to law school, I'd never seen the television show Seinfeld. And
Mm.
it was the same thing. People were like, "Oh my gosh, well, you can't move to the Upper West Side. You haven't seen Seinfeld." So I watched Seinfeld. And so, fun fact, the street that I lived on in law school was 112th Street between Broadway and Amsterdam, and it was what is the name? Tom's Restaurant. Tom's Restaurant was on the corner of the street that I lived on, so I felt like a connection to Seinfeld. I lived between that Tom's Restaurant and St. John the Divine, so it was a
Mm.
blessed street. I loved it.
Did you ever get soup from the soup Nazi?
Well, I didn't know about the Super Nazi until I saw it. But Tom's Diner at that point stayed open 24 hours. So I
Yeah.
had a lot of soup, a lot of late nights, a lot of folks gathering at Tom's Diner, uh, early morning, late night. So
My
there
wife
was,
and I watched Letterman for years. And of course, one of the things that Letterman did for years was he had a camera, I guess, planted at the Hello Deli, which was right around the corner from the Ed Sullivan Theater, and he would go, and Rupert G always acted with this straight face and so on, and they did all sorts of cute things at the Hello Deli, and I actually not the last time I was in New York. Well, the last time I was in New York before the pandemic, so it was like March of 2020. I
Uh-huh.
decided because I was at a hotel close to it, I decided I was going to go to the Hello Deli. And I walked into the Hello Deli and heard this voice. And I meant, oh my, I just thought to myself, that's Rupert G. And it was.
It was. That's
And
so
we chatted for a while and I ate there. It was a lot of fun.
funny.
So yeah, there's so many places in New York. New York and San Francisco, there are just so many eating places and in a lot of ways they're known. And there's some in Boston, but New York and San Francisco are two certainly very eclectic places, especially when it comes to food.
Mm.
But we lived in New Jersey, and you know when somebody has spent considerable time in New Jersey when they can tell you where they were in relation to what off ramp from the Parkway or the Turnpike.
And right at this moment, I cannot remember what my ex was. That's embarrassing. I
Oh my
lived in New
gosh!
Jersey for, was it 135 or
No,
145?
well we were 135 for Westfield, so you
It was 145. Maybe that
ah
was it. Ah, that's terrible. I do not remember. I do not. It was 8 years. I spent 8 years in Jersey,
well you'll
and
have to drive up and go see
go and see.
and come
So
back and tell us.
that's true.
How long have you been in Virginia now?
Well, so I've been in Virginia for 3 years, but
Okay.
I lived downtown in DC for
Mm,
like 7 or 8 years. And I've been in this area off and on since 99 when I
mm-hmm.
first got down here. The only big break that I took was when I lived in New Jersey.
Ah. Well,
Yeah.
I've lived in various places and I enjoy wherever I've been and have no complaints about anywhere I've been. I just think that there are always fun things about every place in the world that there is to go. So
Hmm.
people have said, what's your favorite or what do you like? And, I've got some that I really enjoyed, but I like everywhere I've been. And I've had the pleasure of speaking all over the world. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, I have to agree. And so wait, so Michael, I have to tell you a quick thing. I cheated a little bit. I took a look to see what exit. It was driving me nuts. I was like, what exit? It was 145. It was exit
145.
145. So I guess that, which took me to another highway that took me into Caldwell. So I was right. So I'm feeling a little
There
better.
you
Feeling a
go.
little better about that. I was like, how can I forget I was there for so long? But
Well,
no, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
I was gonna say, but about cities living in, I have to agree. I've enjoyed everywhere that I've lived, and all of the places. I haven't lived in a ton of cities, but I loved Hampton, Virginia. When I was there for
Hmm.
college, it was a great place for me to be as leaving my teens and becoming an adult. It was wonderful. As I shared, I love living in New York. That was great. I liked living downtown DC when I was in DC. Very interesting. I walked around everywhere. I love walking around. It's fun to meet people, lots of tourists, but then people who are also doing different things. I've enjoyed Virginia. So I feel the same. Like all of these places have added something to my life, right? And it's usually the people that are in places. And when you open yourself up to having random conversations with people, those conversations really do enrich your life. And so
Yeah.
I feel the same. I feel the
Yeah.
same.
And it's so important. And I think it's important to really always think positive things. I think it's a lot more fun to do that and to see people where they are. And if somebody turns out to be a real jerk, then you can just ignore them and go on. But I think that people by and large really are wonderful, certainly more unstoppable than they think they are, which is another story entirely, but that's okay.
Absolutely, Michael. Absolutely. And I find that to also be true with people around the world. So, right. So I've gotten to travel around the world for pleasure, but also for work and speaking and training. And I found that by and large, people at the core, we are more alike than we are different. And
Yeah.
while there's lots of different cultural differences that shape who we are and how we move about the world. Like there are really core values that you'll find central to people
Yeah.
no matter where you are.
Yeah.
And it's fun to discover that when you open yourself up to having conversations, listening, and being open to like hearing what people are sharing and actually learning, right? You open yourself up not to always be teaching or sharing, doing that, but also hearing from people and learning from people. It helps you feel more unstoppable
Yeah.
because you can hear the connections and be inspired just by what people themselves have done and have gone through and overcome and what people are thinking about. It's a fantastic way to affirm for yourself how unstoppable you are because you're able to see that in other people when you really listen.
So for you, you said that you, even when you were practicing law, you were doing other things. What were some of the other things that you were doing while you were practicing law?
I was coaching. So
Okay.
I am, and I'll tell you, I was coaching. I am a teacher at heart. Now I talked, coaching is not teaching, but it is connecting with people. My parents are educators. And so I've always had kind of a heart for connecting with people and working with people. Coaches, I mean, teachers are coaches. So, my best teachers, my most favorite teachers were coaches, people who helped me see more of myself, right? Helped me to see and think about more than I more could see that I was capable of more than even I thought. Right? I've always had people, teachers throughout my life who've made me feel that way. And so
Yeah.
even by practicing law, I've always had, not always, for the past 12, longer than that, since 2009, what's that? For the past 16 years.
16 years. Good for
16
you.
years.
You did the math. Good for you.
How about that? I can do a
Yeah.
little bit of math. Even though I tell folks I'm a lawyer, I'm not a mathematician. But I can, do simple. But anyway, I've always done so I've always had a coaching practice and even so I've always had a coaching practice generally. Uh and I've coached in the early years in different places like in my church, my church my church has a coaching kind of a group coaches and therapists, and I've gotten to coach through church. Um, in my law practice in government, there was a coaching cohort, and I got to work with federal leaders coaching in that way. I've had a coaching practice, so business owners I've gotten to work with. And my favorite thing, and the reason I've always had a coaching practice while practicing law is that coaching helps you to listen well, helps you to listen well. And coaching is a great discipline or great profession because it forces you, or it doesn't force, it requires of you to listen well so that you can ask questions of the people who you're coaching so that they can figure out their own answers. And those core coaching skills have been really valuable to me as a practicing attorney and especially as a leader in practicing law because I found that the best leaders, this is true for people who've led me and also what I've heard, feedback I've gotten from people that I've been privileged to lead, that the best leaders listen. They ask questions, they listen, right? You try to understand the needs of the folks who you are supporting. Either you're supporting as their attorney, they're your clients, or you're supporting as your team members because you are in charge of leading the team. The more you listen, the better questions you ask, the more help you're able to provide. As a coach, you're trying to help people find their own answers. As an attorney and as a leader, you're listening so you can help people and sometimes have an answer, right? Once you really understand what you are working with, what the problem or the area is that needs help and support. I
What?
hope that answers your question, Michael.
It
I felt like
does.
I gave you a lot of words.
No, no, no. You done good. Tell me what do you think is the difference between a coach and a teacher or a therapist?
Well, I'll start with therapy because I'm not a therapist, and
Right.
and coaching is really important that coaches and clients understand that as a therapist, you're helping people deal with the things that have happened in the past, right? And so there's a lot of work around things that have happened that lead to where an individual is now and the work that they need to do to get to where they are going. Coaching is about goal setting. It is looking at where you are right now and where you'd like to be, and then helping the client develop a plan of action that they are able and interested and willing to implement to
Hmm.
get from where they are to where they'd like to be. And the difference between coaching and consulting is, as a consultant, I have a lot of information and I'm hired to share information to get my clients from where they are to where they want to be. When I'm hired as a coach, it's very much helping clients look internally so that they are developing the
Yeah.
solution. They're
Yeah.
developing the path because it's there. You just sometimes need someone to ask you questions to help you unlock the internal wisdom that you already have. So that's the difference between like a therapist, a coach. I added in consultant. A teacher is much like a consultant, right?
Hmm.
Teachers have more information and they're sharing that information with you. And the best teachers are able to share information with you in a way that in a way where you're able to access that information so that you can then make use of it.
Well, yeah, and what I've always heard, and I think you really touched on it very well, that what a coach does is a coach isn't in the business of providing information. A coach is in the business of listening and working with you and helping you discover
Absolutely.
what you need to know. It's all about discovery.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is unlocking that internal wisdom that is already there. That's
Yeah.
what I do as a coach. And it's fun. It's fun to do that. It's
Yeah.
very fulfilling.
As it should be. That makes a lot of sense. Well, so you've been doing a lot of coaching. Um,
Yes.
and what else have you been doing?
So I've been doing a lot of coaching. We shared that is fun. I have also been doing a fair amount of training and consulting in the area of artificial intelligence. A lot of my, in the past, most recent years, the most recent past, my practice of law has been around data privacy. And that has led to a lot of work in artificial intelligence and risk assessment, governance, developing governance frameworks, helping organizations do that, helping boards think through risk management, risk mitigation. And so I've been doing that, which is fantastic, really interesting, and a lot of fun too. Very
So,
enjoyable.
so people oftentimes feel that technology is just such um, um, what's the what's the best word, monstrous or intimidating kind of thing to deal with, and they're very intimidated by technology, and they tend not to learn it, and so on. How do you get people over that attitude, especially now that we're encountering more and more uses and examples of the so-called artificial intelligence?
That's a great question, and you're right. There are a lot of folks I encounter who first come to me who are intimidated by intimidated by artificial intelligence, intimidated by technology, and so they either do one or two things. Well, they do can do many things, but two things most common. Folks avoid it at all costs. And so they're like, I'm not dealing with technology. I don't understand it. I'm going to continue doing what it is that I'm doing. I'm going to pretend that it does not exist. Or the other extreme. And it is like really advocating all of their judgment and creativity and control to whatever technology, artificial intelligence now is the big player. They give away all of their brilliance and their creativity, and they think that the artificial intelligence, the tool, knows more than them. And so they're like, you know what? I'm just going to depend upon this tool to do everything that I was doing because this tool is knows better than me. Both of those responses are unhelpful. They're
Mm-hmm.
terrible. And they're not accurate, right? And so the way that I often get started with people who don't have a technology background is to look at first, what are you doing that's repetitive, that does not really require your creativity, doesn't require your judgment, doesn't require your empathy. What are those things that you're doing that you would happily give away if something else could do it, because it would free you up to be more creative, to exercise your judgment about information more, or to do things differently, right? To give you space and capacity to do more. When you've identified what those things are, those are the things that you want to think about. Can technology help you? How can technology help me do the things that I've already identified do not help, that don't allow me to be my most creative, innovative, thoughtful self? And then you look for tools to take care of those things. That's the best way to to get started with technology and not be overwhelmed. It is looking at specific things. I call them use cases when I'm working with clients that you want the technology to do for you because it's going to help you do something else better.
Mhm.
That's where we get started.
Yeah, I personally love to use technology like Chat GPT, but what I
Uh-huh.
do with it is I figure that it's actually developing a relationship. And what I like to do with Chat GPT, for example, when I'm writing, is
Mm-hmm.
I'll ask Chat GPT to give me its ideas on whatever I want to write. And I'll
Mm-hmm.
ask it to do that like 8 or 9 times because I want to get different responses.
Mm-hmm.
And then I will take all of those responses and put them together with what I think, and
Mm-hmm.
I will then write a final version. But I will never let ChatGPT write the final version because I think that that's got to be, no matter how much it might be able to emulate my words, it doesn't emulate my thoughts. It can add and contribute to them, but I think that's where a lot of people truly miss it. They think, oh, it's just going to take over. Or I always hear people say chat gpt is so bad for students because it'll write your papers for you. Well, it can if you let it do that. On the other hand, I still am an advocate that when schools are assigning like papers for students to write and they go home and they just use chat gpt and then they turn the paper in, my suggestion to teachers is take a day after papers are turned in and bring each student up and give them 1 minute to defend their paper. We'll see what they really know.
You
And
know,
and I think that's really the issue because, as I said, I will work with Chat GPT or any of the technologies, but I have to create the final product, whatever it is.
well, I think that, I mean, so where you're using it really in that way we just talked about
Right.
to augment your brainstorming,
Right.
right? So you are brainstorming, you're asking it for ideas. You take a look at those ideas, you make some adjustment, you ask it to expand upon it. That's a way of using it to support your own creativity. And what I think that teachers will do more of, right, as folks are getting more used to artificial intelligence. I think and some teachers are doing it. It is important to build artificial intelligence into assignments. We're
Mm-hmm.
living in a world where the technology exists, and we want young people and older people too. We want folks to know how to use artificial intelligence to expand their own thinking. And you just gave a great example.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I was a teacher, an English teacher in particular, or a science teacher, I might give an assignment that included the use of artificial intelligence, right? Especially because students now have access, I think most of them access to a computer, at least at school, right? So you also want to think about assignments. You don't want to create inequity in what
Mm-hmm.
students have access to, but you might ask a student to, if there's a paper that this student is writing, a part of the assignment could be what prompts would you give ChatGPT to help you? Or you build in usage of the chat tool, whatever the artificial intelligence tool is, and whatever that output is. So maybe you tell students one option is to write a prompt for chat GPT, and then it gives you an output, and then maybe ask a student, if you're assuming that that's happening, what questions it might ask ChatGPT to get a better or a more a response or a product that is more inclusive of what that student actually thinks. And so I think in education, as we incorporate more of AI into really the fabric of how students are learning and how they are expected to go and get information, there'll be less of a focus on kids just not doing the work at all and doing what I told you. There's like two examples: either people hide and they ignore it, or two, they advocate all of their creativity to it. The place in the middle is not only assuming that people will use, or young people, students, not just young people, but students will use ChatGPT or artificial intelligence, but assuming that they will, and building that into the deliverable that you were getting back. And that's important for elementary, not really elementary, but middle school, high school students to do, and graduate students. Instead of just saying, forget it, do not use it at all, build it into the work.
I had an opportunity some time ago to talk with someone, Glenn Gow, who was a business leader coach in Northern
Mm-hmm.
California. And he promotes AI a great deal. And he and I were talking during our episode together about companies using artificial intelligence. And he gave a great example. The first thing he said was AI will never replace anyone in any job. People replace, but AI won't. And if they misuse AI to do that, then that's a problem. But one of the things that he said was that he was working with a customer and he was trying to, and his customer was trying to get more innovative and get more innovative responses out of a number of his reports.
Mm-hmm.
And what Glenn did was to say, so come up with a way to use artificial intelligence to do that. Well, what the guy did was he called all of his top executives in and he said, I want you to take the rest of today and I want you to use ChatGPT and artificial intelligence to come up with new ideas for how we ought to do things and how the company ought to function and bring all that to us tomorrow. But he was very specific in saying, don't just do it, use AI.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that the guy was just totally amazed with the incredibly innovative ideas that people came back with. And
I
I can understand that. It makes perfect sense.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to use AI and to encourage, and I hope he did this as well, to encourage people. And it happens when folks are doing it and they understand they're using AI to supplement or augment their work. They don't just take what the artificial intelligence gives them, the output, but they do what you've just described, Michael. They challenge it. They ask it like questions. It gives information. They ask it to be more nuanced, right? They might give it the information that the artificial intelligence, the intelligence system gives them may inspire them to think about something else. And so then you add that to the mix and you get
Hmm.
feedback. That really goes to that example that we just talked about with teachers integrating AI into students' output. It works in a professional corporate setting as well. Now, it's important to have safeguards, right? So you want to be very clear that you want to know the tool that you're using,
Sure.
like how that information is protected, what are the terms of service. Hopefully it should be a paid tool. Don't use a free tool if you're putting in a lot of company information. But it's important to protect the information, to be clear about what how generally clear about the output you're getting, what that's based on. But yeah, I mean, use artificial intelligence to make things easier, or faster, so that you can then put your energy or your time in being more creative, more innovative, more thoughtful, because a baseline of work has already been done.
What does it look like to you to make AI practical for people who just really don't have any kind of technical training and they've never really learned how to adopt a technology oriented kind of mindset? How do you deal with that?
I think you first look at what's something that you want, what would you like to do better? And then you think about how can technology help me. So you may have someone who feels that they're all over the place when they're reading information and they have a hard time summarizing what they've read, right? And so you may have that person use an AI, an artificial intelligence tool, to help them summarize their thoughts or summarize a paper. They read the paper and they have to write something up, or they have a hard time pulling out the big ideas. Artificial intelligence can help you do that with the summary. Now, I always tell clients, don't just rely on the artificial intelligence to
Hmm.
do work. So if you get a summary, that's great. Now you read whatever has been summarized and you can compare what you've read with what the summary is, because you see the summary and sometimes it helps you think, yeah, that's a pretty good summary. Or you may look at it and be like, oh no, you know what? There is something else that's missing, because you've read the underlying document and you've allowed the artificial intelligence tool to help you. It's the same thing with writing. I tell folks when I'm doing training, don't just tell an artificial intelligence tool, ChatGPT, write a message for me, to whoever you're writing the message to, and just give it the general idea topic about what you want, right?
Yeah.
Actually take a first step at drafting whatever it is you want to draft, right? Even if your ideas are all over the place or you don't think you're the best writer, write it down. And then you can ask ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity or Gemini. You can ask it to help to make your writing more concise, make it more organized. You can ask it to do specific things, but you take the first stab at it. This way you get your thoughts out and these tools are supporting you. So that's how I I help train, kind of coach people around using technology. Think about something that you takes you a long time to do, you have some difficulty doing, and allow the technology to help you do it better, but you take the first stab at it. Or if it's summarizing something, you go back and read what it's summarized so that you can make sure that it's accurate. It just helps you to get unstuck. That's a great way to start.
Hmm. What what would you suggest people do to, as leaders, train themselves or make sure that they're asking the appropriate questions so that no one gets left out of being involved in whatever you're working on?
You know what? That's how do I train leaders to make sure that no one gets behind? So, the first part, it's important for leaders to have a good sense of who's on their team, right? So, you want to have a good sense of who's on your team. And then it's important to uh, pay attention. You have to be, not being a leader is being intentional.
Hmm.
And it's hard sometimes if you don't have a lot of support. But it's important for you to have a general idea of who your high performers are, who your biggest contributors are, and who's silent, who's quiet, right? Who's not showing up as much. And designing work, designing opportunities, allowing AI to help you assess if the folks who are not contributing as much as you think that they could, have the tools that allow them to do it. Or if you can use AI tools, you can use AI tools to help people help themselves, right? To provide access to tools that allow folks who are having some difficulty, who are not feeling confident in some ways. Maybe it's writing, not as strong a writer, right? And if writing is not a critical part of our job, AI can help that person. We talked about perhaps you have an employee, somebody's reporting to you, a team. Someone's on that team is likely to feel overwhelmed in the beginning with information or with breaking down projects into tasks. And if that's not a core part of their job, it is something that they need in order to get a better result, then it's thinking about using technology to help in that area so that the person can get unstuck, from the things that are not meaningful to their effectiveness, and have those things taken care of so that they can then use their creativity, their innovation, and the things that you're really paying them to do and to bring to your team. So that's what I would suggest. Leaders having a general idea of who's on your team, who's a strong performer, who's not, and think about what tools can help people get unstuck so that they can really do what you're paying them to do.
And certainly one of those tools is this whole thing we've been talking about with AI.
Absolutely.
If you can give people a positive experience in terms of helping them see what maybe a product like an AI oriented product does that can enhance what they do, you're by definition giving more confidence to those people if they realize how they're able to incorporate that into their lives.
Absolutely. And I feel like for leaders, it's all about use cases. It's doing the work so that you understand or you have ideas for how AI can be used in your organization, in your team to help folks. And when you share that, right, AI can help you write better. It can help elevate your writing, or AI can help break a project into more manageable tasks, or AI can help you expand your research. If you have a set of sources that you always go to and you know that this is a good list of sources, AI might be able, like Perplexity is a tool I like, may be able to find additional resources for you so that you can have that information. So the more you spend, the more time or energy you invest in really getting clear about the use cases, the things that you need to be successful, and how AI can be used. You share that with your team, and now you are helping people to empower themselves and do better work, to be more effective with their work using AI because you've started with a problem, or if not a problem, an area that can be enhanced. That's how you start to really get an ROI, a return on your investment of time and funds into technology.
How can AI, when used responsibly, help deal with the whole issue of removing barriers for people with disabilities? And I said we weren't going to talk about diversity and inclusion and diversity, and here we are. That's okay though. But
I love it.
how can you use AI responsibly to help remove some of those barriers?
That's such a great question, Michael. One of the things that AI, one thing it does really well is um, it takes information and it can provide information in different formats, different ways that are easy for people to consume. And so your background, I got to learn about, and in the early days, you did work with machines that were able to scan information and make that information easily accessible to people, right? Huge $50,000 machines, I think I heard you
Right.
were responsible for earlier in your career. Well, right on our phones, right? We have a tool when we have artificial intelligence, and then we have the actual tool, our phone, our computers, where you can take text and have that text converted to voice so a person can hear if it's more difficult for them to read, or you can have images and you can have those images described in ways that a person could read them if it's easier to kind of to have words that describe a photo and now those words are read aloud. Or if you have someone, I gave this example before, who can be easily overwhelmed by projects that have multiple steps, and now you have an AI tool that can break out what needs to be done so that a person cannot have either a sensory overload or just an overload of information, feel stuck. They can have that done. So these are ways that artificial intelligence can take information and can either dissect that information or convert it into a different type of format that then makes it easier to be ingested by whoever needs that information based on the specific need that they have.
Another thing that AI can contribute to is something that involves a company that I do work with called Accessibility. And
Mm-hmm.
Accessiby is a company that began back in 2018. And the intent of Accessiby was to create, using artificial intelligence, mechanisms to make websites more inclusive. Now,
Ah,
they at first did a fair amount of overpromising of what it would do, but
mm-hmm.
the company has evolved an incredible amount to the
Mm-hmm.
point now where, in reality, the picture that it presents with AI is only part of what it does. But the reality is that AI is being used by a number of companies in the disability arena
Mm-hmm.
to help deal with a variety of issues. For example, as you just described, describing pictures. It couldn't
Mm-hmm.
have done that 2 years ago, not
Mm-hmm.
very well, but
Yeah.
now it's doing it a lot better. It's also true that AI can be used to actually provide other kinds of powerful things. For example, one of the things that I'm working with is a pair of smart glasses made by a company called Agiga.
Uh-huh.
And the EchoVision glasses have a function where you can actually tell the glasses to describe whatever they see.
I love it.
And it's very accurate at being
Uh-huh.
able to do that.
I love it.
And it's only the beginning. It will get better over time. The reality is sometimes some of the creators of these things are not necessarily doing what they need to do in the best way. There are parts of Chat GPT that have been not totally accessible, which is unfortunate, and some of the other products as well. But they're going to get better over time.
Absolutely. And we have to continue to advocate that these tools are evolved in a way that is inclusive.
Yeah.
That is inclusive. Because when tools evolve in a way that is inclusive, it benefits everyone, right? We all benefit when tools are more expansive so that they are accessible by more and more people.
Not AI related directly, but back in 2007, the National Federation of the Blind was going to sue Apple because Apple wasn't making its iPhone, its iPod, its iPad, its Mac, or even iTunes University on the web accessible. They just didn't see the need to do that. And then something happened that caused Apple to shift its view. And what happened was that Target had been sued, and Target kept trying to avoid it. And finally, they had to settle the case. The belief is it would have cost about $40,000 if they had just made their website accessible. But by the time Target settled the case, it cost them $8 million to do it. And Apple looked at that and they said, oh, we've got to deal with this. And in fact, they wisely did something that I think is extremely clever. They put the ability for their technology to talk, a product called VoiceOver, they build it into the basic operating system. So anyone that buys an Apple product today has access to VoiceOver to make the product accessible. There are a couple things that Apple hasn't done, which, for example, is that they don't require that app developers make their apps accessible. But their argument is, well, we're giving people the guidance and the guidelines to do it, and they're doing it. Well, there are some, but there are also some who don't, which is unfortunate. But the bottom line is that Apple has made an incredible amount of giant leaps forward making things available. I'm still amazed that not more people use VoiceOver on their iPhones in their cars to give them verbal information rather than having to look at the iPhone.
You know, I wonder if some of that is an education piece,
Oh,
and
I'm
so
sure
we
it
have to
is.
continue to talk about it and to help people really maximize the tools that they have, or really rather optimize them, right? Optimize and maximize the informational tools that they have.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
No, I think it's all education. Or
absolutely.
I think most all of it is. Do you work with a lot of people who are in positions where they want to do career transitions, they want to change because they're becoming caregivers or they need caregivers or they're doing other things? And if so, how do you deal with making sure that you honor or they honor where they are now, much less where they have to go to?
I absolutely do. People, I would say there are very few things that are constant, and that you can count on. And one of those things is that there will be change. There's always change, right? And so when you're working with professionals, even within organizations, I've worked with professionals, even within organizations, people are often changing or transitioning. And
Hmm.
so one of the things that I have our clients do is be really honest with themselves when they find themselves at the start of or in the middle of a change, to really be honest about where they are in their career or their positioning in the company, what they are dealing with in their personal life, and where they want to go next. Because when you do this, you're able to determine one, your how much shifting you need to do and your capacity for um, taking on new assignments or making a wholesale change or needing to do things in a certain cadence, right? So the more honest you are about what's happening in your life and where you would like to go and what's happening in the environment around you, the more thoughtful you can be with making a path or creating a path forward from present state to optimal state. So that's a part of what we do, right? It's an assessment, and that assessment leads us to an assessment, a desired state, and then that assessment and desired state tells us what to do next. That's where we get started. And then the other thing that I have found in working with people who find themselves in a transition or they find themselves caregiving, that's actually a big thing right now with the number of folks, is really taking a look at the season that they're in and changes that you need to make or that they need to make in a particular season, understanding that seasons change and seasons shift.
Yeah. How do you help people bring their passions into their careers in a sustainable and an accessible way rather than it being exhausting to themselves and other people?
Oh
Because
my God.
people are very, are very passionate about a lot of things, and usually people who are very involved and find themselves really committed to doing things can be very passionate about it, but they can also be very exhausted by it. How do you deal with that?
Oh my gosh, this is something that I'm talking about working with clients a lot. Here is the key thing that one of my jobs is to help clients come to themselves and come to a realization themselves, is kind of understanding that you don't have to do things in isolation, right? You can bring your passion and your interest into
Mm.
your present work, right? The present job that you have, the present career path that you find yourself in. There are often lots of ways to bring your passions there. I gave you an example. At the beginning of our conversation today, I shared that coaching has always been a passion of mine. And I found ways to coach in a variety of different places. So when I was serving in federal government, there was a coaching cohort, and I could coach inside of the government with the coaching cohort. I was able to make it a part of my job, right? I had I worked in a company at one point, and there was a mentorship program that company had. And so my desire to mentor young people at that particular point in my career, I didn't have a lot of time outside of work to do a lot of things, but within my job, I was able to mentor young people because there was a program there. And so, what I advise, so now we talked about coaching clients, but I also do this kind of with clients who I'm a consultant with. So, my approach depends on the hat that people have hired me to wear, consulting hat, coaching hat. But the bottom line is helping people to see where there are opportunities within their current job, within their current career, within their current business to do a portion of the thing that they feel passionate about and not have it be disconnected. And so when you're able to do that, it one makes your work more enjoyable, makes running your business more enjoyable, and it allows you to bring more of yourself. So That's a long way to say a short answer is look within what you're doing right now to see if there are pockets where you can bring the things that are of interest to you into that place where you're spending the majority of your time.
And if you do it right, you can also probably bring other people in your organization along.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that
Absolutely.
makes all the difference in the world. But you have to have something that you can get people to buy into.
Absolutely. That's it. And you do that when you really kind of think about what your passion is. And I'll say this. You think about what's your passion from the perspective of who are you helping? Who's being transformed? What's changing? What's the impact of your passion? Because that allows you, if you have to build a business case or build a case for bringing something new into your workplace, if you're clear about the benefit, the impact of it, it helps you to bring that into your working environment.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
And it makes all the difference.
What mindset shifts do you think really help leaders move from behind to moving sort of in a more advanced or progressive way?
What helps you from moving behind to moving ahead in a more progressive way? So, one thing that helps leaders um, transition out of feeling that they're moving behind is to stop comparison. Stop
Mm,
unnecessary kind of self imposed comparison, right? So I have worked with leaders. I think about one person in particular who'd created a highlight reel of what he thought his career should be like, what he'd envisioned it would be at some point in the past. He'd created what life should be like, work and life should be like. And he had a list of these highlights. And so he was measuring himself. And so this wasn't even comparing himself against anyone else, right? And so, I'll think about, so I'm thinking about actually, and it's not just, I've had several clients. Um, so I'm making this like broad. I've worked with several people like this who have created a highlight reel from a past time and they kind of plan their life out and it doesn't look like they decided that it should have looked at some other point. So the first part of that is releasing yourself. So that's the first step. Release yourself from a highlight reel of what you thought life should look like. And so you feel behind because your life has not been in a straight line because life is often not in a straight line. Once you're able to do that, you can take a real look at where you are, what you're doing, and what you want to do next. And you're not ahead or behind. You are just where you are and you can be clear about what you want to do next. So that's one thing. People also create, compare themselves to what they think, what other people are doing, either what they know other people are doing or what they're thinking other people are doing. It's the same advice. Detach yourself from that,
hmm
right? If you can detach yourself from that and you can look at where you are right now and you can make a decision about where you would like to be, then you design a path to get you from now or here to there. And you're not behind, you simply are where you are. So it's a detachment from either internally imposed or looking out or externally kind of imposed ideas of what should be happening and when. And I'll add one more thing, Michael. And sometimes life will move in such a way where you may have thought that something would happen and the time really has passed and that particular season in your life is over. Then a part of it, again, is assessing, looking at where you are right now, letting go of whatever it is that there really is not time to do because that season has passed and create a new plan for where you want to be and then live that out.
If somebody is feeling overwhelmed or unseen, what's one step that you would suggest that they could take right now to help deal with that?
If they're feeling unseen, someone who's feeling underutilized and unseen,
I'm sorry?
repeat that question one more time.
If somebody's feeling unseen,
Yeah,
overwhelmed, or
overwhelmed.
uncertain, what's a
Mhm.
step that they can take to deal with that?
So it's very similar to what I just shared about kind of detaching from what you think you should be doing, or what you think you should have done, or what you think other people think you should be doing. And one way is to take a look at where you are right now, the tools that you have right now, the resources that you have available right now, and then take a real honest assessment. Looking at where do you want to be, right? What's the goal? And then you can use AI to help you actually with this. If you take an assessment, a description of where you are right now, the resources you have right now, the skill sets that you have right now, and you know what it is you want to do, what you want the next step to be, then you create a path, right? Sit down and you write out what you think the steps are. You can hire someone to help you. You can let ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity or Gemini help you. And once you have a list, Michael, the next step is very easy. Do one thing. Take the first step on your list. And once you've taken that step, take the next step. That's it. It
Yeah.
is seeing life and seeing tasks as things that you do, seeing life or your goals as things that you accomplish one step at a time. And you remove the external timelines that you've created or other people have created so that you are moving step by step.
You've got to start somewhere. And the trick is to take that first step
That's
and
it.
then build from that.
Absolutely. What have you found? What have you found to be helpful with the clients that you've worked with? Because I know you work with lots of
I
people all over the
I
world.
think it basically is that you have to start somewhere,
Mhm.
and only you can truly decide where you should start. People can
Mhm.
advise you, people can give you ideas and thoughts, but you have to
Mhm.
make the decision and you have to be the one to start the process. But the bottom line is that you have to take that first step.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter at all what you're doing. You still have to start by taking that first step. And I think
Absolutely.
that's the most important thing.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
well, TC, if people want to reach out to you, how do they do that?
Well, you can reach out to me. You can find me on the internet on my website. It is www.coachtc.com, COACHTC.com. You can find me on Instagram if you look for I am Coach TC, and also on LinkedIn. It's easy. I am Coach TC is my LinkedIn URL. You could do a search for TC Cooper. But coachtc.com is a good gathering. It's like the watering hole for all of the things that I am doing online.
Well, I want to thank you for being here and spending an hour with us. Can you believe it? It's been
Oh
an
my
hour.
gosh.
We're having so much fun, but I'm going to have to go, and I'm sure you've got things to do. It's dinner time back there, so
Absolutely.
one has to eat dinner.
One as the
One has to. But I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank all of you for listening. I think TC has had a lot of great insights we can all use. I would appreciate hearing from you about your thoughts about our episode today. Feel free to email me at Michael, Michaelhi, at accessibe.com. Wherever you're listening, please give us a 5-star rating. But more important than a rating, please give us a great review. We really appreciate it when people do reviews. And I know that people who are considering listening to podcasts like Unstoppable Mindset are more apt to feel comfortable about listening if they see good reviews. So we hope that you'll give us a good review. If you know anyone who ought to be a guest, love you to introduce us, TCU as well. Anyone you know, we'd love to have them on. Just introduce them and we'll go from there. But with all that, I want to thank you for being here. This has been absolutely fun. So thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Michael, for having me. It has been so much fun. Thank you so much. And thank you to your listening audience for listening and being a part of this experience. Thank you.
If you're ready to go deeper into the ideas that shape how we see ourselves and others, I have a free gift for you. Head over to michaelhingson.com and download my free ebook, Blinded by Fear. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep choosing to live with an unstoppable mindset.